But would you look at that? It's November again. Everyone gather around the old turkey. Let's talk some Pokemon.
Congratulations!
Man, it feels weird being back in Pokemon Month. Each time this time of the year comes around, I get excited because I love making these videos. Also, a little nervous because these can take some time to make. Sometimes these can be the bane of my existence. And they also extend into December, which is really annoying. Speaking of bane of the existence, we are starting this Pokemon off with Villains. Pokemon Villains go by a very similar tune. Each game has an evil team, sometimes two, trying to achieve some evil plan, from just organized crime to trying to end the world. And all of them have the same kryptonite: 10-year-olds. However, some are better than others. I'm here to count down my top 5 favorite Pokemon villains. Let's start off Pokemon Month. Oh snap, it's your boy Gusma! Gusma, although not that old of a villain, is one of my favorites. Gusma is the leader of Team Skull, a sort of joke villains. However, Gusma is no joke. Gusma is no joke in battle, and he can be a serious problem. I remember his goalie speed being a big problem for me and my team. His team is pretty solid, and I like how he uses bug Pokemon and poison Pokemon. Two types I don't feel like get enough attention. Also, just kind of the areas you meet him in are really cool. I love the Team Skull town. It's such a cool area. And Gusma's a big part of that. Sadly, the reason Gusma isn't much higher on this list is that the game mostly plays Team Skull for laughs and nothing else. And Gusma is not only one of the funniest villains, but one of the best. Also, sorry this part was really short. I've been trying to keep Sun and Moon spoilers pretty brief in this Pokemon month, just because even though it's almost a year old now, just in case, some people are just getting into it just now, but good job Sun and Moon. Pokemon isn't known for its plot twists. It's not a big part of the games. In fact, stories usually take a back seat. It's mostly about your personal journey and the bond you make with that world. The story can be pretty simple usually. I said this for even my favorite generations like Gen 2 and Gen 4. However, ironically, the game to throw the most twists at you is Generation 1. And I gotta say, my favorite twist in Generation 1 is when you find out who the 8th gym leader is, Giovanni. Giovanni is just the simplest form of villain. He's basically just a mobster. But he's so menacing that you can't help but feel threatened by him. The mood changes when Giovanni arrives, and you feel that all of the story isn't that great overall. Giovanni is that one shining spot. Team Rocket is fairly bland in the first 2 generations, however Giovanni is that splash of color, bringing it all together. Not only that, he's really hard. His battle, in my opinion, is the hardest in the whole game. Even with Pokemon that are good against him, I always fear Giovanni. That's what good villains do, strike fear into you. I may be pretty hard against Gen 1, but I can't deny it has one hell of a villain. I said even in generations I like, the story can be pretty straightforward. And one example that I gave was Generation 4, which is still my favorite generation. And I love Gen 4, but Team Galactic never truly lived up to their potential to me. They could be pretty hard fights. The fight against Mars is hard for me to do, and Jupiter is no pushover also, but I find the story with them fairly straightforward and a little bland. However, there is one exception: the big boss Cyrus. Cyrus, in my mind, is Giovanni on steroids. Cyrus isn't a very showy villain. He doesn't make himself obvious like other villains. The game sets him up perfectly. You meet him fairly early on. Each meeting, he becomes stranger and stranger. You know something isn't right there, but you have no proof. However, once Cyrus reveals himself, he cements himself as great villain. He's a lot more active than most villains also. You can fight him really early for most Pokemon games, and he's pretty tough. Although, a little detail I like is that he actively talks to the grunts. Well, active may be a stretch, but he makes a speech to the grunts later on in the game, and you can see why these people follow him. That's a question I had a lot in the other games, like why do these grunts go along with this crap? Platinum, in a lot of ways, answers that. Cyrus is also one of the more successful villains. He's got really close to getting what he wanted. And in some ways he did by staying in the distortion world. Cyrus is a cold, calculated villain, who even though he lost, the feelings of him never goes away, even as you fight Cynthia. I was just expecting him to pop out of the bushes and kick the crap out of me. Sadly, he doesn't, and he hasn't really returned since, which is sad because he's one of my favorite villains. Anyways, moving on to another awesome villain. If we're talking the most successful villains, let's talk about Lucamine from Sun and Moon. If we're talking unsettling and strange, she's pretty much top of the list. She isn't in the game as much as Gusma, but she makes herself known throughout the story. Even though we meet her, you can tell things about Lily and her history with her. And when you finally meet her, when she turns bad, she totally takes over the game in the best ways. Vapor Foundation is super unnerving. I remember I had slight chills when exploring the lab below the station. It's unsettling in all the best ways. Lucamine's connection with Lily is one of the highlights of Sun and Moon for me. As someone that found Gen 6's story ambitious yet underwhelming, Sun and Moon made up for it, and Lucamine is a big part of that. When she goes full crazy, it's amazing to watch full out. She's an amazing villain, and one I hope returns. But before number 1, here are some honorable mentions. In recent games, your rival isn't really a bad guy, but Silver is just that. The first interaction you have with him is him punching you halfway across town. Also, him being the son of Giovanni makes him even more interesting to me. Honestly, I find Team Aqua and Magma really stupid. I'm not really a big fan of either team, but I gotta say, Archie and Maxie are pretty fun villains. I do like when they pop up from time to time. Some call him the main villain of Gen 1, I like to call him just a brick. But Blue's got some charm, I'll give him that. But let's go to number 1. I said that your main rival in most modern Pokemon games isn't bad, and I mean that. But there is one minor rival in one game that in my opinion is the best villain in all of Pokemon, and it's N. I don't even know where to start about N. He's a strange character, leader of a strange team, Team Plasma. A team trying to free all Pokemon via Pokemon battles. I know it's hypocritical, but you feel that N means it. N communicates with Pokemon. The more and more you meet N, the more and more you are unsure of him. He seems to waver on that line of good and bad. It's not until Nimbasa that the truth is revealed. I remember when I got to this moment, I was really sad. Black and White is such a short time, got me very interested in this character. I was sad to see him become a bad guy. You fight N a number of times after, enough for me to personally count him as a rival. Speaking of battles, N's battles are awesome for one reason. N is constantly switching it up. Each fight N throws in a new curveball on his team. He ditches old Pokemon all the time, keeping you on your toes. It's an idea I love, and I hope one rival or some other character does this again. Story-wise, N is an amazing character so much that I really don't want to spoil it for anyone that hasn't given Gen 5 the shot it deserves. I swear it gets way too much crap. N is an amazing villain, and he alone is worth the price of buying a used card of the game. Just for a shot. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching, and that was the first video of Pokemon Month 2017. Stay tuned for my top 7 favorite regions. I know, exciting.